Hi, everybody. This is Anthony. Hope everyone is doing well. Hi, JoLynn. How are you?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Not bad. I can't complain. I cannot complain. We want to thank everyone for joining Industrial UI's webcast. Again, thank you for joining. We have some great topics today, or one topic, but with a lot of great things about that topic. And it's fitting because it is Pride Month. But the usual, will first just give a little shout out to to Industrial UI, thanking them as a company, and just the services that we provide. Again, we offer unemployment insurance cost control services as well as HR support services. Any questions about anything we can help out with, just let us know. You can email myself, aparadiso@industrialui.com. And how about you, JoLynn? How could people reach you?
They can reach me at jharesign, JHARESIGN at industrialui.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And certainly if any topics come to mind or any questions that come to mind, feel free to email us. Again, beyond the services that we provide, we also, if you have any ideas of what kind of topics that we can cover, any particular questions, just feel free to reach out to us. But today's agenda really is a great one. It's obviously it's Pride Month, so we want to really concentrate and discuss Pride. We have some questions for one another. I also wanted to start off with Juneteenth, because Juneteenth is also this month, and I am looking. Well, I'm looking at a different computer, but I am still here. Just a snapshot as far as what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is a federal holiday in the United States, commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, deriving its name from combining June and 19th. It is celebrated on the anniversary of the order issued by Major General Gordon Granger on June 19th, 1865, proclaiming freedom for slaves in Texas. So that is the official, that's what Juneteenth is. And don't mind me, I guess I can't really read today. So again, just bear with me here. And then also just a little, just a segue into Pride. The EEOC issues statements, various statements throughout the month, and obviously with this one, they went into a Pride statement, and they said 3 years ago, the Supreme Court issued its landmark decision in Bostock versus Clinton County, consistent with longstanding position of the U.S. Equal Opportunity Commission, EEOC or Commission. The court held that the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity because both are forms of sex discrimination. A decision interpreting federal law that applies throughout the United States is an important milestone in the ongoing effort to promote equal employment opportunities for everyone, including LGBTQI plus workers. To go on with that, and I'm almost done here, our recently filed lawsuits are a reminder that even as we celebrate Pride Month and the many accomplishments of the LGBTQI plus community, many of our friends, neighbors, colleagues, and family members continue to face discrimination at work and in other areas of life because of who they are or who they love. Their strength, resilience, and courage provide an example for us all, for all of us, as they are both as they for us all, for who they love. Their strength, resilience, and courage provide an example again for all of us as we do our part to prevent unlawful discrimination from occurring and take appropriate action when it does. So that's just a little bit of a statement from the EEOC. I thought it was a great one just to see, and again, every year, the last several years, they have done that. So with that, the first question that we have is, what does Pride mean to you, and how do you celebrate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think pride means something to everybody. I mean, pride means something for people who are in the LGBTQ plus community and also for allies of the LGBTQ plus community. I think that, pride should be every month, should be every day. We always want our employees and our friends and family to always be their authentic selves and always celebrate who they are, no matter if it's June or July or November. But I do feel like this is an important month especially now with, a lot of the things that are happening in this environment where there are, you know, laws being passed where, there's rights are being infringed upon. And so there's a lot going on. I think it's now, very important for us to acknowledge that, we're here, we definitely want to celebrate pride and never hide your pride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I learned something a few years ago because again, I always sort of Pride Month, being LGBTQ, being part of the LGBTQ community. I always thought of it as particularly, aimed for that. But as because as myself being a part of the community, I do a lot of presentations and stuff for organizations during Pride Month, and I found out while doing my presentations and just getting ready for them and talking to various people that Pride really is for everybody.
Mhm.
Even if you're not a part of even if you're not part of the LGBTQ plus community, we all still want to strive, to be what you said, JoLynn, our full authentic selves. So, so I really do feel that yes, it's a celebration and it's a remembrance of what has occurred the last 5 decades since Pride has started. But it's continued and it moves forward to make sure that we're celebrating everybody, all of our differences and all of our all the things that make us different. So yeah, I learned that more a few years ago about that. So it's fun. But I also, one thing to point out, because as I am giving presentations, I do kind of one slide of mine that I put out there is, what comes to mind when you hear a pride. And typically, it's rainbows and parades or the usual typical things that we think of, but there's so much more than that. There are so much issues or real issues that are happening with with everyday lives, with transphobia, especially with our youth, with attempting suicide rates really skyrocketing. So it's really, there's so much more to it. Yes, we want to celebrate the pride and the parades and have fun, and I definitely recommend going to your local pride event. I mean, it's super fun. You could you can learn so much. But just while with that, just also remember that there's a lot of education involved. So that's just a side note.
Yeah. I find it interesting, particularly because, the Civil Rights Act has been around since 1964. But only 3 years ago did they interpret it as being inclusive of gender identity, expression, sexual orientation. So I feel like, you know, we slow walk a lot of things in when it comes to, recognizing how we're changing and evolving. And, I think that's really striking to me that, such a long time from, you know, the Civil Rights Act, which enshrines basic human rights, it took, you know, 30 or 40 years to include a significant portion of our population. So I hope that, we can really move forward in other areas to recognize, that things are changing. But my question for you, Anthony, is, what is it? I mean, we want everyone to celebrate Pride, not just for the LGBTQ plus community, but also allies. But what does it really mean to be an ally? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, so interesting question. And it's, I mean, listen, allies are extremely important. The LGBTQ plus community wouldn't be where it's at right now without allyship. And, certainly there have been a lot of people within the community that have done so much. But as I stated, I mean, without allies, we really wouldn't be where we are. So and it's interesting because usually when people think of an ally, they tend to think someone that's protesting, someone that's going to marches, someone that might be very outspoken on social media, and that isn't the case. It's I mean, certainly, listen, that's one way of being an ally. But I think what happens in your life, you kind of realize what things you like to do, what you don't like to do, and you may not be comfortable protesting or going to marches, and that's fine. That doesn't mean that you're not an ally if you don't do that. You know, an ally is simply someone who's just learning about the different things that are going on within the LGBTQ plus community. You know, educating yourself on the transgender issues that are going on, you know, on gay or queer issues that are going on. It's just, you know, educating yourself every day is one way. You know, sticking up for someone that's going through something at your workforce or personally. You know, if you hear, you know, if someone is transgender and someone's not correctly identifying that person as the way they should be, you know, you can certainly stick up for you know, you can stick up for that person. Now, how you do that is up to you. I mean, you don't have to deal with, you know, I'm not saying you have to yell or scream or fight with the other person that happened with, you know, that created the situation, but you know, you can do certain things that can help. And, you know, so speaking out, also, you know, sponsoring or mentoring you know, people within the community. So if you're in a work, you know, if you're in your workplace and you know, you someone who's maybe someone young is coming out and you know they're part of they just entered the coming out process and all that, and you know, maybe mentor or sponsor them with how they can you know, with the work, because they're going to need that, they need help. So that's one way of doing it. So there's really no clear path to being an ally. It really depends on how you individually want to be an ally. But I don't want people to feel like you have to do like the marching and the protesting and being very outspoken on social media. That doesn't necessarily again mean that those people are allies, but you don't have to necessarily do that. So I hope that kind of gives a little more of a clear answer with what you know. And one more thing to add too is also just listening. You know, listening to someone that's coming out or that's a part of the community and going through a tough time. Just listening alone to them is an ally.
Yeah, and I think also being open to having the conversation and being open to learning. You know, not everyone is gonna jump into the allyship lake with both feet. You know, it might be dipping a toe in and like just being that, you know, person, you know, whether it's at work or wherever you are, is meeting that person where they're at and saying, hey, I'm here. I may not know, you know, the right words to say or the right, you know, actions to take, but I want you to know that I'm here and I'm willing to learn. And I think that's also important, just to be, you know, acknowledging that you may not know everything that there is to know, but you're willing to learn and you're willing to accept people for who they are.
Exactly. And that's exactly the way it is. Yeah. Well put. That's exactly. It's, you know, it's definitely important to be an ally, and the community definitely needs that. So the following question, how can organizations create inclusive environments for the LGBTQ plus community? How do you think JoLynn, how do you think organizations can create an you know, inclusive environment for the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I think that um again, just acknowledging that you may not know all the right things to say or all the right actions to take, but being willing to make people feel included, make people feel like they can be their authentic selves. And, you know, having pride events at your workplace, that is great. Having a you know, employee resource group to discuss, you know, how we can make new employees feel more included, you know, all of those are a great start. You know, as an HR person, you know, making sure we're developing policies around the idea that we want people to feel included in our culture. We want people to be themselves. We want people to be free to express their identities in any way that we would treat any employee, regardless of race, national origin, sexual or gender identity. You know, it's important that all employees feel included and that they can be, you know, a force for good in the workplace. because as you treat employees across the board with respect and allow them to be their authentic selves, then the greater your workforce is going to be. So I think that taking, even if it's a baby step, even if it's you're not sure what to do first, the first step is to say our organization wants to have that inclusive feel to it. And that's an important step to take. And then everything after that is a discussion. It's what does it mean to you? What does it mean to your organization? How can, your specific organization or agency reflect allyship and reflect being inclusive? It's going to be individual, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And every organization does it differently. What works for one organization may not work for another organization. But it's like a couple of things that come to mind. Because actually, I just did a presentation yesterday for an organization for Pride Month, and one of the questions that came up was, how can our policies create a more inclusive environment? And JoLynn and I know, since doing handbooks, handbook development, that's one of the first things we look for is there's a current organization, there's a current handbook. Is it very specific to a certain gender? Are you saying him and she currently throughout your private through your policy? And obviously making it more of like using the pronoun with them more in the policy. So to avoiding using specific pronouns like he and her, with he and her, or those kind of things. How one way how you could also, people may look at that as a very small thing, but that small thing can be very encouraging to people that are that are a part of the community within the organization. And another thing that's really just important is really just education too. I mean, whatever initiatives, if you want to have employee resource groups or whatever it is, you also want to educate your employees on what these various things are going on within the community, even just simply as with definitions, with what with what LGBTQ is, because not everyone may not know. We may think that a person does or a person should, but that may not be the case. Some people just don't know, and that's perfectly fine. But educating them on what these various things are important. And then along with education, also discussing mistakes. We can make mistakes. If you wrong, if you identify someone incorrectly, I mean, obviously if this is and obviously not intentionally, if you do it by accident, that's fine. The other person, from what I have heard and from what I see, I don't think obviously that person may get hurt or maybe disappointed, but as long as you fix the problem, apologize, I think overall, the person that it happened to will accept that, and then along with that, maybe even asking, if you have some questions about the transition process or any kind of appropriate questions. From what I have seen, the community really wants you to ask those questions. I mean, again, appropriate questions. I don't mean just any, but asking appropriate questions is a good thing, and that creates that education, learning, and most people within the community are okay with that. So just there's a lot of nuggets there, but it does I think those are important things.
Yeah, what do you think that employees look for most when they're thinking about, an employer being an inclusive workplace? Like if you had a wish list or a checklist for what an employee is looking for that is either a member of the community or is a strong ally and is looking for, representation and looking for allyship and where they're going to work, what are some of the things that an employer or an HR person can do to fulfill that need?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, yeah, I mean, certainly. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. If you aren't sure how to, if you have a question about something that you just don't know, you can, you should or can go to the, H person in HR, or, a colleague, or somewhat. So you certainly, if you have a question, that you don't know, that you don't know how to handle something, that can certainly be a way, you can certainly go to your, like, either maybe there's a specific employee resource group that might be available to talk to. That's if your organization has one. And then, obviously, like you mentioned too, HR, or maybe employee relations, someone else that may be able to help. Because listen, things are changing. I'm a part, being part of the community myself, I don't remember and know everything. It's just, it's there's so much information coming at us. And it's happening and it happens pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So, once you think you get something at one time, then a lot of new information can come out. I'll be very honest. Even the word queer is a very interesting word to me, because I'm in my early 40s, and when I grew up, queer was not an acceptable word. I mean, well, it wasn't. It was a negative word, more than a negative word. It was you didn't want to be called that back, when I was in my 20s or whatever. So we've changed that. Now the word queer is a part of the LGBTQ acronym. Um, so how does someone like me handle that? Because when I was growing up, that wasn't a word we used. And the more younger generations have accepted that, and I've kind of now kind of gone with the flow, and I've gone, I don't particularly like using the word myself, but if I hear it, I don't cringe as much, because I kind of have gotten used to it. So yeah, it just you mentioned this, JoLynn, in the beginning of this webcast, was evolving. We evolve, and it just, things happen slowly, and we just gotta kind of just keep on going and learning and evolving.
Yeah. As long as we're doing that and not staying stagnant, I think that we're making progress no matter what. And one of the things that I do when I'm, interviewing a potential candidate is, I'll introduce myself and let them know my pronouns. Hi, thanks so much for coming in. My name is JoLynn. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And that opens the candidate may not say anything in return, they may not say their pronouns or whatever, but it kind of puts it out there in the ether that, I'm letting you know what my pronouns are, because that's how I want to be identified. And if the candidate is so inclined, they can let the interviewer or me know, how they want to be addressed. If it's the same as if my name is JoLynn, but my nickname is Joe, feel free to call me Joe. Like, if they have a nickname, or if they have a specific pronoun that they, would like to have implemented when you're discussing or referring to them, I think that's perfectly fine. I think that shows them that you are a safe space. You are a person who acknowledges that there are different, gender identities and different pronouns, and it maybe put them at ease a little bit.
Yeah,
So I think that's a small thing we can do.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very important. Yeah, definitely. That does show that you're a safe person to go to. Definitely, absolutely. And the person who, and don't mind my dog. He's seeing somebody outside right now, so just try to ignore him. But any event, yeah, that's a safe space for that person to know. And if they don't, they don't have to reciprocate with the pronouns. There's no rule of that. So no, that's very good thing to mention. And then, which then segues into the next question, are what are important characteristics that we find, that we want to see leaders have. And I mean, and I can kind of go into it right away, because one thing that we kind of have learned and we have seen after the pandemic and now is empathy. Empathy has become, such a, we're craving that now. It's such an important characteristic to have. Where before the pandemic, we really, I mean, there were certainly leaders that were empathetic, but it certainly wasn't a characteristic or quality that we necessarily wanted our leaders to have. And now we want our leaders to have that. It's almost like now, almost like a requirement. If you're applying for a job and you see a leader doesn't have that certain quality, people may not be applying to that position. So I just wanted your thoughts on what certain characteristics or what you think people are really craving for in this new era now.
Yeah, I think empathy is definitely one of them. Flexibility is another. They employees are looking for, their workplace to be sensitive to what they may or may not be going through. That's why we have a real focus on mental health right now, because as you mentioned earlier, the suicide rate has skyrocketed over the past few years due to the pandemic, due to a lot of things. So I think that employers and organizations can make a concerted effort to have wellness events, checking in with your employees. How are you doing? How are you feeling? In addition to the things we mentioned earlier, allowing people to be their authentic selves, allowing people to have the safety of being at work and being recognized for who they are. I think those are, the cornerstones of any successful organization, is allowing employees, you be you and be our ambassadors in the world, and do the work, and hopefully you enjoy what you do, and be yourselves and encourage us to let you be yourselves. Always be reminding employers who you are, and your HR people and your teammates of who you are. That way it's a reminder to us all to practice kindness at every turn and have empathy for what people are going through, or things they may be going through that they may never tell you about. We all have our own stories. So be sensitive to that.
Yeah, I mean, the employees are the backbone of the company. So without the employees, there is no organization. So yeah, absolutely. Leaders should really kind of get to know their employees more, and talk to them and get to know their stories and whatnot, just and making that time. So it's really important. I just wanted to end off with a few some questions. Not necessarily for you, JoLynn, but just for our audience, they can kind of answer if they want. If you had to guess, how many colors did the original Pride flag have? One option is 8, which is again, that's the first option. 5, the second option, and then 6 is the third option. If you had to guess, JoLynn, I have the answer because I looked it up, but so I won't cheat. But JoLynn, what would you think is the answer?
I think it was 6.
Close. It's 8. 8 is the original Pride flag, and obviously, as people know, the flag has changed, especially since the pandemic. Now that we now have the Progress flag, but the original Pride flag had 8. And I'll end off with one more question. Which popular sitcom portrayed the first lesbian wedding on primetime television? The first option is That 70s Show. The second option is Friends. And the third option is Full House. I had no idea what the answer was to this, so.
Wow. I would probably guess Friends or Full House. I don't think it was That 70s Show.
Friends was the answer. So it's just very very interesting. And that was a long time ago, because Friends was on in what, the late 90s or mid 90s?
Yeah, mid 90s.
So yeah. But that's it. We had a few more questions in there too, but we're almost running out of time. But we do want to thank everyone for listening. And JoLynn, any parting words at all before next month's webcast?
I don't think so, other than, pride is every day.
Yes, pride is certainly every day. I mean, it's important for June, but just remember to be nice and authentic, and just be kind, as JoLynn mentioned before, every day, even before and after June. And again, if you want to reach us, you can reach me, Paradiso, at Industrial UI. Aparadiso. And JoLynn, how can people reach out to you as well?
Same way, Haresign, Haresign at industrialui.com.
Any questions you have, feel free to reach out to us. Again, Industrial U.I does unemployment insurance cost control, and we also now do HR support. So anything that we can help you out with, just give us a shout and email us. Thanks so much, and see you next month. Happy
Thanks,
Pride.
everyone. Happy Pride.